Yo, Kpaceguy here. Hey, so we're going to talk about speaker levels, and I've talked about it quite a few different times on the channel, but as my channel grows, more and more people ask me about speaker levels, how to set them, should I go to the positive, should I stay in the negative? We're going to talk about all that today. Let's get right into it. So first, we need to understand what speaker levels are if we're going to be able to set it correctly. And speaker levels, if you go to your menu in your AVR or preprocessor, it's the ability to turn the volume up or down inside your receiver or preprocessor for each individual speaker. So front left, center, front right, rear left, rear right. And if you have more speakers than that, if you have more subs, you can change the volume levels to kind of optimize the sound the way you need it to. When you run calibration, your receiver is going to try to do that automatically. And if you didn't know, the receiver has a goal it's after, and it's to make sure that all your speakers sound the same level at where you're sitting at. So if you sit here and you have speakers different distances from where you're sitting, well, on the settings, your levels will be higher or lower than one speaker depending on how far away they are. For example, you may see in your receiver that your front left speaker is -2, but your front right speaker is +2.5. That's because your front speaker is probably further away from you than the other. So that's the point of calibration, getting levels correct, is to make sure that the sound hits your ear at the right time. Now, a lot of people will go back in and make adjustments. Sometimes you may not be able to hear your center channel. A lot of people will boost their center channel so that you can hear the dialogue above all else. I recommend doing that. A lot of people raise it up 3 dB. So 3 different levels on the settings. So that's what speaker level is in short term. It's getting all your speakers at the right volume. Now, if you have an external amplifier, this is more like a gain than it is a volume knob. And that's a problem. You don't want to see or set your speaker levels like they're volume knobs, because it's not. You have a dedicated volume, a master volume on your receiver or preprocessor. That's your volume knob. All these levels are different gains in a sense, gain matching each speaker to make sure that it's playing the same volume as its neighbor. But it's not a volume knob, so you can't just go cranking things up. But why? So you don't want to crank your gains up all the way. Most receivers and preprocessors have -10 all the way up to +10. And so you may see a lot of people like myself say you want to be careful going too far into the positives. The reason being is because let's say you have a receiver and it's rated at 80 watts per channel, right? And that's at reference level. Your best, most powerful moment is at reference level, or 0 on the master volume, pretty much max volume. So let's say I turn my receiver up to 0, then turn my speakers up to +10. I'm now +10 dB above my max volume. And what problems can that cause? Well, the biggest thing is distortion. Your speakers may not be able to handle that level of sound, and you may just blow your speakers. Or it may be harder to hear and it turns into heat, also known as clipping. Clipping is when you try to exceed an amplifier's max power. And you can do that if you boost or raise your levels way past 0 dB on the level meter. So again, we have -10 up to +10. You want to try to stay in the negative or as close to around 0, because anything above 0 is above max volume. So if you ever turn it up that far, it'll be above max volume. So you have to be careful. So the biggest thing that people ask me is, how do you set levels? But the next biggest thing people ask me is, my gains or my levels are in the positive, is that bad? Well, not necessarily. Again, we explain why it can be bad, but sometimes it's just absolutely necessary to raise it past 0. For example, for me, my Atmos speakers are the furthest speaker away from me in my home theater. They're way up in the ceiling, and when I sit down, I'm furthest away from those speakers. So I actually have my Atmos speakers a little bit into the positive, which is necessary to make sure that they all hit my ear at the same sound level. Again, the goal of setting your speaker levels is to make sure all your speakers are heard at the same perceived volume. Even though they're not playing the same volume from speaker to speaker, when they hit your ear, they are. So it's okay to get into the positive. Maybe you have a big room. You just need a little bit extra oomph in your speakers. Maybe you're like me and your speakers are just far away and you need a little more volume. That's fine. You just have to remember, as you get closer to max volume on your receiver, you're plus however many dBs higher than max volume, depending on how many dBs plus you are in your settings level. So if I have my front speaker to +3 and my right speaker to +4, when I get to max volume on my receiver or preprocessor, I'm 3 or 4 dBs higher than what my max volume says at that moment. So you have to be careful. If you're never going to turn it up to max volume, well, you're never going to reach the point of exhaustion with the amplifiers. You're never going to reach the point where you're giving too much or asking too much power and clipping your system. It won't happen if you're not at max volume. So let's say you never turn it past -20 on the dial. That's great. You're not really at reference level necessarily, so you don't have to worry about being in the positive on your levels. So there's one speaker in the system that's a little bit different in the rule book, and that's the subwoofer. Yes, you can change its level, but you have a dial knob on the back of the sub. So, is that the same problem? Well, it's different. If you're into car audio and you have a subwoofer in your back, you have an amplifier to power that car sub. And in the car audio world, we have what we call a gain knob, where we set the gain and make sure that our voltage is right so that we're not overpowering our sub or we're not over exhausting our amplifier. So you set your gain. A lot of people think gain is a volume knob when it's not. Gain just means you're matching the voltage of your receiver or your head unit so that as you turn the volume up, you never clip. That's kind of the same idea with home theater. When you turn your subwoofer levels up, you're more so increasing the voltage going from your RCA into your subwoofer so that it can receive a signal. If you didn't know, a lot of subwoofers have a standby mode where they turn off after 10 minutes of no signal and they turn back on when they detect a signal. So if you have a problem with your subwoofer and you're playing movies or music and it takes a while for your sub to turn on, well, maybe your voltage is too low and it's not getting a signal until you turn the volume up a lot. You can negate that by raising your subwoofer level so that more voltage comes through your RCA so it triggers faster, and just turn your volume down on your subwoofer back to the levels that's necessary. So with a subwoofer, yeah, you probably can turn it up to +10, but you don't necessarily want to because you don't want to send a clipped signal to your subwoofer either. You can do that even though it has its own amplifier. Your RCAs on the back of your receiver have voltage ratings. 0.2 volts, maybe 2 volts, 1 volt, whatever. You don't necessarily know your voltage of your RCA. So if you start pumping up the volume knob on your subwoofer, you may send a dirty clipped signal to your subwoofer, and that can blow your subwoofer as well. Sending dirty signals is just as bad as sending dirty power or cranking your volume way too loud. So even though your sub has its own amplifier, you still have to be careful with its own speaker level. There's tons more I can say about speaker level, but I'm going to leave it here. And anybody in the comment section who wants to add further, please do. A lot of people read my comment section. I read my comment section. So leave any advice you guys have for those looking to set their speaker levels up. If you want a more in-depth idea of how to set your speaker levels, I do have a how-to playlist. And in that playlist, it's called How to Set Speaker Levels. So I actually go in-depth and show you guys how to do that. Whether you're using an SPL meter or just your ear, I show you all the techniques. So again, leave me some comments down below and let me know some of your ideas around setting your speaker level that I didn't mention. And if you're having trouble, feel free to ask me in the comment section. I will respond to you more in depth to give you some help. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hit that like button and subscribe if you are not already. And we will see you in the next video. Kpaceguy out. Peace.